I think we're good. As I mentioned, we're going to start officially tonight at 8, but I'll introduce. I'm Nathan, known as Bardic Punk on TikTok. This is my live for June. Typically, I do these once a month, and this month's theme is heated, both for the oncoming summer, we're getting close to midsummer, as well as the general tone of a lot of my writing lately. I share works in progress, poems, songs, short stories, book chapters, just whatever's new and interesting, and I think people might want to hear. I also take requests from past work if there's something you've seen on my TikTok or a type of work that you're interested in hearing. I'm happy to share those. I see some comings and goings. Hello, hello. I will say that I am well set for today's theme in both senses. It's warm. I'm a little sweaty. And yeah, my gut's churning and I've got a broken tooth hurting. So I am well and truly annoyed at life at the moment. Not meaning to dump on you, just saying that there's lots of things to be irritated about of late. And that's even without getting outside of my personal sphere and into the world. We'll talk about some of that in the poetry and stories here. Hello, welcome to more coming in. Say we're get officially started around 8 o'clock here, but welcome to say hi if you're wondering what's going on. I will go through the introduction. Yes, hello. Who's commenting? Susan McClellan. Happy Pride. Yes. It is Pride Month. As I say, I'm doing Wrath today, but it's Pride Month. Yeah, toothache. Well, it's coming out next Friday, so that's another reason I wanted to do this now, well before midsummer, is I don't think I'll be talking all that well next weekend. Fortunately, I've got a good backlog of videos recorded for TikTok. I've been partialing them out every 2 or 3 days. So, yeah, lots more of the tarot card series, of the Owen poems. Providence, awesome. I love that city. I've only got to visit a couple times, but I really liked what I saw and had a good time. Didn't get to stay. But, yes. I don't know if you noticed from the Bardic tag that I am pagan or from the backdrop. Got some altars behind me. Okay. Just letting me know that it's 8 o'clock. So that's pretty cringe. Well, I found that a lot of things that people call cringe are actually pretty awesome and noble. So the term's getting watered down a lot. But yeah, being pagan in this day and age, more popular, sacrifice any small animals? No. If you haven't caught up, pagans don't do that anymore. Satanists don't even do that anymore. So yeah, you need to catch up on your reading just a little bit, find out what pagan actually means. All right, I'm going to stop responding to that kind of thing, but welcome to everybody else who's come in. There are things that are still cringe, but like I say, the term's getting watered down. It's like woke. People call stupid things woke and they call smart things woke, and what does it mean anymore? But no, it is true that things are still what they are, and some things are still pretty repugnant. But yeah, the terms seem to get misused. I'm a great lover of words, so it saddens me to see when they get muddy. All right, let's get into the actual activities. When did I get into punk? Technically, the first time I told my mom no, but in reality, probably about the time I left home for college and started going to underage 17, 18-year-old shows. Out in the lovely Bloomington, Indiana. There are a couple of good clubs for some local scene musicians. All right. Hello again. My name is Nathan. I go by Bardic Punk on TikTok. That is because I am a bard in training for my druidry path, my studies, but also I consider it to be a bit irregular. I'm not formally trained in any sort of English literature, poetry, music, or writing technically, but I do all of those and more. What I'm doing tonight is sharing a number of works, and tonight's theme is called Heated, because that seems to be the common theme lately, both in terms of the nearing summer. It's nearing midsummer here, and it's already quite warm. It's been in the 80s, and this is northwestern Pennsylvania. So I can only imagine, and I've seen weather reports of how hot it's getting elsewhere. And also anger, irritation. There's a lot of things to be pissed off about. So that comes out a lot in my writing. If you've watched any of my TikTok videos, you occasionally hear ones where they're pretty much just yelling set to rhyme. Okay. As I like to do the first one, I'm going to try to do just straight from memory, short poem, one that I haven't put up anywhere yet. It's called Irritation, appropriately enough. A jagged speck of the world, broken, slips into my skull, irritating inside my head. I roll it around in my mouth, coating it in soothing words, smoothing layer by layer, building up a shining stone, a pearl to spit out later. I usually rhyme, but that one felt like it needed to be as it was, prose. Now the next one, then the official start, is where the theme for this got started originally. So the first official one, like I said, this was where I thought, hey, I'm writing a lot about anger lately. It's called Converting Fury. A short story to explain this. People at work were talking about if you could be one of the Avengers or one of superheroes, which one would you be? And they turned to me and said I had to be the Incredible Hulk. I assume they mean the mild-mannered scholar raging at times, but I didn't realize I was giving off that much anger vibe. And then I thought about it and said, yeah, I am pissed off a lot at a lot of things. I need to do something about that. So that's part of where this came from. I'm angry at the people doing one another harm. I'm angry at the people who keep sounding false alarms. I'm angry at the people who can't seem to care at all. Too often I'm too furious for thought. I try not to howl at others, though I'm not convinced I'm wrong. You can hear it breaking through when I compose my poems and songs. But the more that I express it, then the more my anger grows. It's doing awful damage. Yes, I know. I just can't keep being angry or my brain or heart will burst. I'll stay sick and tired at best or else I'll find my grave at worst. But it's hard to let this anger go when others die and hurt. I'm mad I can't do more to fight the world. Yes, I have been told to meditate, to let my anger leave, but it feels too irresponsible to let my mind be free, to look away from troubles that right action might relieve, though I admit I've got no remedies. Since I know that throwing fists around is not the social option, I've tried working out or playing games to give my body action. Although at times I've managed to immerse in deep distractions, this anger's worse as I draw near exhaustion. What I need is some conversion that turns anger into fuel, to extract the rancor from my mind and burn it for good use. But every pump I've tried so far just overloads and bursts. My method may not be found in these words. I would guess I need a way to chip away at what I loathe, to be proactively productive but not overly exposed, so that I might feel a smidge of change, a modicum of hope, and let my anger serve some concrete cause. What great purpose that might be I haven't quite decided yet. There's a wealth of foes to face, but I don't have ideas to help. I could join a cause in progress, but don't want to make a mess. I'd hate myself if I just made things worse. I suppose I'll have to risk it, choose the best that I can find. As for what I could contribute, I'll just let circumstance decide. And I've only got a while before I lose my strength or mind. I'm wasting fire keeping it inside. Called Converting Fury. Thank you. If you haven't noticed from that and from my TikTok videos, I don't stay stuck to one particular form. I'm not a sonnet writer or even a rhyming poetry writer, although I do like things that sound more like lyrics, lyrical or bardic, ballad meter, excuse me. But I sometimes do that intentionally, is challenge myself with a different form. So that one you could hear had irregular stress going through it. Again, only people typically who've studied these things care much, but I wanted to give a feeling of an erratic sort of emphasis. something that's driving and coming close to flying off the edges. So that's part of the idea. And again, part of the reason I throw punk in there is not following any rules. I generally go with the first few lines and see what meter or travel, what flow goes with it. I see a question, what music do I like? To some extent, almost all of it, but I'd say my deep set favorites, obviously, punk rock, ska. I know, that was of my day and age back in the mid-90s. It was very popular, third wave and California punk ska. But we do get formed by what we get formed by. A bit of metal, a bit of electronic. Again, think, late 90s, early 2000s, you've probably got that range, except not as much pop. If it gets repeated too much on the radio, I tend to lose my taste. Do I like Minor Threat? I probably don't listen to them as much as I should. I know I've liked a couple of songs, but yeah, that's one I'll have to put on the list to listen to more later. Most recently, I've been getting backward into things like electric swing, like your Caravan Palace, into folk rock, not really folk rock, but older styles with a rock twist, like Dirt Poor Robins. Actually, Decemberist is the nautical theme, but basically stuff that use older forms but spin them up to modern day. Real Mackenzies. If anybody's again followed my TikTok, I've done a couple poems recently in a Scottish brogue and a Scottish English accent. I partially blame Real Mackenzies for that. So, do I like new wave? Only a little, and that's mostly because of my first wife's influence, goth club scene. So, just a bit. I'm down for the occasional Depeche Mode. Good taste. Thank you. Momentum. Okay, make a couple notes actually to track these down later. What was it? Minor Threat and mention momentum. I love suggestions, by the way. No life is long enough to listen to all the music that's out there, just like trying to read all the books that are out there. But good suggestions sometimes pan out, don't they? Okay, actually, I'll swap my order here, moving on to the next poem. So the next one was inspired by, again, bardic study. I say sometimes I'm a bard in training. It's because I haven't finished the actual coursework for my order. Been doing a lot of the composition and practice and learning, but I got to sit down and write out the formal work, the essays. But this one's called No Part-Timers. It comes from that process. You'll get a feeling of some of the anger that's in there too, though, how it fits our theme tonight. Excuse me. No part-timers. I've been told you're not your job, which sounds like sound advice, especially when you're just a cog in some unkind device. But there are roles that you have to hold down in your very soul, or else you'll never yield great work or be completely whole. The clergy's one. You must have faith in people, if not gods. And soldiers must commit to fight, or else they'll win no wars. But even these can leave some gaps between their selves and service. A doubting priest may serve their flock. A soldier may serve mercy. Yet I have found two other roles that wholly claim my being. A scholar must be curious. A bard must live with feeling. If you would teach and learn and know, you must be always seeking. The stock of knowledge always grows. Its dividend, more reading. To build a lesson true and clear, and also entertain, demands you understand it well, a jack of that domain. And sharing wisdom other ways, in story, song, or verse, requires a bard internalized to fully manifest. In fact, when scanning what you wrote in order to recite, you have to feel it in your soul, to memorize it right. It's hard to hold a long deceit, and dry detail gets splintery. The best mnemonic is belief, and passion fuels delivery. So bards do best when they invest and give their all to Awen. It's not a job to leave half done and then expect ovation. The muses may demand at times and claim you as possession, but don't mistake a maddened mind for bardic inspiration. The call is not to be burnt out. That's true of any worker. The fire of insight should give light and warm the bard or scholar. The trouble comes from holding back hot verses in cold vessels. The strain can make you twist and crack, and ultimately shatter. So if you'd learn or if you'd harp, prepare to be bound fully. For those who teach with half their heart deserve to burn in folly. Oh, momentum with words. Okay, I understand now. Thank you. And I appreciate that. That's part of why I say that my work is often lyrical, is it sounds song-like even if it isn't, is I want to keep that rhythm, that pace. It works for ritual work. It works for getting a point across, the feel and the bounce and so forth. So that is intentional, and thank you. I mentioned a word in here, awen, that people may not always know if they're not steeped in literature, paganism, and druidry. Awen is a term for the force of creative inspiration, the wisdom, intuition, that flash of understanding. It can come from study, it can come from spiritual experiences, it can come from labor. Working and doing something can bring you to awen. But it's that feeling of, there's ideas like it in Eastern philosophies also, but this is specifically a term from Celtic Druidry, of being divinely inspired. It's the best way to summarize it. So when I say give your all to awen, it means let that inspiration come no matter what form it may take or what it may demand of you. Sometimes it just demands staying up until 4 and 5 in the morning, writing down ideas. All right. For anyone who's come in a bit later, it looks like we've gone back and forth again. Suggestions are welcome if there's been a past work that you've been interested in or a particular style of work, whether it be liturgical, about a particular deity. If I've got something like that, I'll be happy to pull it out of my files. I've got the box sitting next to me. Or I'll switch around the order if I've got something of that nature. So speaking of, this is the last one that's really pagan inspired, although you'll notice it strays off into other domains. The poem's called Thalia is Unamused. If you don't know, Thalia is the Greek muse of comedy, of humor, because the Greeks were clever in a number of ways, and one of them was considering humor, jokes, haha funny as well as ironically funny theater type stuff, as being divinely inspired, of being part of the sacred. So Thalia was specifically the muse charged with inspiring and encouraging and supporting comedy. I try to be funny from time to time. So I give Thalia her due, her offerings now and then. But this poem is called Thalia is Unamused. It's about what I don't consider comedy. Let's resolve this issue, please. Hatred isn't comedy. Reinforcing stereotypes is lazy, stale, and hackneyed tripe, and mockery is most effective if the target does deserve it. Picking on the low and margin means you're out of better concepts. Lack of thought or empathy just panders to stupidity. By mouthing the majority, you just maintain the LCD. Though some may laugh when you're a bastard, there's no art in failing virtue. Kids may cheer the schoolyard bully, not because they think he's funny, but in relief they're not the victim, and in hopes he'll smile and spare them. Look at whom your joking angers. Not the strong? Then you're a coward. Unwilling or unskilled enough to take down someone truly tough, and you will be forever marked as licking spittle, lacking heart. When the punchlines all punch down, they always target those who fall, and someday, when you're weak and needy, you'll be fodder for their comedy. Right when you could use a lift, some joker deals out slaps and kicks. Now do you whine that you've been canceled? Time itself will wipe your record. Jabs that lean on current bias fail to land when standards rise. You'll be a footnote in the files. One more product long expired. Gee, what could have inspired that, I wonder? I've often said it, bigots don't do comedy. They do abuse, and people laugh, because sometimes laughter is a reaction of relief. Did I mention I'm mad about a lot of things? Welcome to those who've come in. Mic drop. I always try to end it on that not the but a yeah. Oh wow, I'm really on that theme, aren't I? I just noticed the next one up. I'll just keep going on that mode since I've got a few people in and see if I can keep them here or lose them. It's called We Might Replace You. Again, current events are always a great source of inspiration. We might replace you. The bullies and bigots are feeling endangered. They're lashing with laws and they're buying up guns. Their fears were unfounded. They weren't in danger, but devils stir anger to drum up more funds. Though as they keep raging, they're losing their credit. And fewer may follow with each generation. Maybe it's truer than I once expected. They might go extinct. Yes, we might replace them. Can we replace you, you haters and zealots? Please fall out of favor. The world's had enough. Although you keep trying to breed new believers, no one should miss it once shit has been flushed. It seems, in the moment, like hate is resurgent, as fascists and failures expend all their power, but I'm holding hope that they sense their last moment, the sad, angry roars of a starved dinosaur. Oh, there's battles to wrangle, and people to stand for. The worst must be bound so they can't do more harm. Sadly, their rabies could spread to new victims if we don't defang them, or rather, disarm. So when folks complain that they're being deleted, I'll ask, what's the value in letting you stay? If you're causing damage to what we're all building, then why should I cry if you lose your old place? And if they've got nothing but insults and anger, I don't see a reason to bend to their threats. There's nothing to fear if you know your own value. It's only the worthless who might be replaced. The bias is important. Please talk more about that. Bias. Oh, you're talking about with comedy? I'm not sure what you mean by bias, but if you mean in comedy, talking more about it. I mean, I can pontificate, but there's a reason I like to put things in poems and stories. It lets me think out what I mean to say. But yeah, I mean, again, as someone who has done stand-up comedy in the past and intends to do improv in the future, bias is not comedy. Yeah, because basically when your joke is just coming from this person is less than, this person is undesirable, this person is an outsider, look at them, they're not one of us. All you're doing is reinforcing the commonplace, what's already in place. To me, comedy has to do with pointing out truths, about opening people's minds, about looking at oddities, not as, haha, that's weird, but, that's strange. I hadn't thought about that before. And waking people up as opposed to keeping them asleep, if that makes sense. And people laugh. Again, I think a lot of people mistake that. Yes, you share my bias. Yes, you share my hate. Gee, I'm glad that's not me type of laughter, as opposed to, wow, that was clever. So an example, Carlin was excellent at that. Yeah, where you went, holy crap. Or as Carlin would say, holy fucking shit. That's amazing. I hadn't thought about that. And you laugh because it's something opens up. Destroying the bias. Yeah. Where you point out, wow, we've just accepted this all our lives, but have you thought? Another one that you might not think of that was formative for me early on was Red Skelton. He was an awesome character comedian, and he'd do characters that originally you'd think this was mocking, like a clown or a hobo or a drunk. And you realize he was being sympathetic to that person. He was letting them be a real person and making you go, maybe I shouldn't have been mocking at first. So I've never laughed so hard as I have at his comedy routines. But yeah, I've broken up Carlin, Pryor at times, Richard Pryor. Now I'm getting sad because I'm thinking of one or two that were really, really funny at one point and then went downhill. Anyway, we're doing mad tonight, not sad, right? So, Artie Shaw, yeah, I've only seen a couple of short routines from him, but I did smile. Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong. Okay, I'm thinking of the wrong person. Yeah, the one that did the kind of German character, I think. I remember. Yeah, it's a ways back, isn't it? Laughing. Damn. I didn't watch the Red Skeleton when he was live. I'm not that old, but in old tapes, something my parents loved. Okay, I want to change pace a little bit. I've been ranting and raving. I'm still keeping with the theme tonight, but we're going to go with a different kind of anger. I wanted to read a short story. It's one that I've written quite a long time ago, picked out because it fit the theme tonight, and I've not done it on TikTok. I read it a long time ago on my YouTube channel. But this form of anger is cold anger, revenge. The story is called Ammannunitup Lost His Children. I'll also warn you for listeners, this is a non-standard or non-Western narrative style. I love to work with alternative narratives. If you're familiar with in media res, starting in the middle of the story, it's a little bit what that's like. But there are a lot of non-European native story formats and traditions that tell a story what we think is out of order, but it has its own internal logical order. And that's what I was trying to get at, is if I could understand how that worked. But let's see how it goes. I think you'll get it once we get in, and it's about 1,000 words, so probably about 10 minutes. Again, Ammannunitup lost his children. Ammannunitup was an up-top man. He climbed the great trees to their tops, crossing the canopies into the sun's domain. With his net and his knife, he gathered sweet blossoms blooming above, and the flitting kinnet bird that fed on them. Ammannunitup wore dark glasses of colored glass and a hat woven of canopy leaves. The dark glass protected his eyes from the sun. The broad leaves protected him from beasts, from the eyes of the long-clawed silic, from the eyes of the wide-winged tascree. Either beast could kill a man easily if they caught him. Ammannunitup braved these dangers to feed his people. Ammannunitup lost his wife. Ammannunitup, the wife of Ammannunitup, was a build-wall woman. With her spade, she split the soil into blocks. She stacked the blocks up in between the trunks of the great trees. She built these walls to protect the people from beasts and men. Other men from other places would come to steal from the people. The high walls of soil slowed them down. When Ammannunitup found clay, she brought it to the brickmakers. The brickmakers fired the clay into bricks. The bricks replaced the soil from the inner walls, making the walls stronger and higher. The high walls of brick stopped the raiders. The village grew out in layers, like a shell spiraling outward. The Magacansi people came without warning. Ammannunitup and Ammannunitup had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Their children played at the feet of Ammannunitup, smeared with soil and clay, stacking up blocks for their mother. Maybe their daughter would be a build-wall woman. Maybe their daughter would be a brickmaker. Maybe one of their sons would be an up-top man. Maybe one of their sons would be a long-clawed man and fight the raiders. The children could not come with Ammannunitup. It was too dangerous. They could not climb up high enough. They could not climb down fast enough. They would not escape a beast. They were safer behind the walls with Ammannunitup. Ammannunitup killed many enemies. Ammannunitup dove from the canopy with his net full of kinnet birds, the great tascree crashing behind him. He fell into the heart of the Magacansi, luring the death behind him. The tascree killed many, biting and slashing, driven beyond fury as the Magacansi fought back. The taskry was enormous, and it was angry. Men were not made to fight a beast of the sun's domain. Not the up-top men of the Magakansi, and not even their long-clawed men. Ammannunitup was broken by his fall. The Magakansi killed him easily after the taskry finally fell. They defiled his corpse. He had cheated at war, but Ammannunitup did not care. He was dead. No one would care. His wife was dead. His children were dead. Ammannunitup was up top when the Magakansi came. Ammannunitup returned home from the canopy when the sky started to darken. When the sun returned to earth, it was too dangerous to hunt. It became hard to see the Silic and the taskry. Other beasts came out at dusk too, and it became hard to see the branches, even with the good sight of the people. An up-top man came home at dark and returned at dawn. Ammannunitup had lost his spirit. Ammannunitup returned to the trees before dawn. He climbed up, heart heavy, but not heavy enough to slow his climb. He carried his wife's spade, his eldest son's knife, and his own knife and net. Their blood flaked from his hands as he climbed. Tears bled from his eyes. Honor bled from his heart as he made his plan of revenge. Tradition said Ammannunitup should have joined the long-clawed men when they struck back against the Magakansi. He was a strong man. He was a clever up-top man, but he was not a long-clawed man. Ammannunitup would die at the first wall. No Magakansi would have died for him. No enemy would follow his wife and children up into the sun's domain. Ammannunitup lost his people. Ammannunitup reached the outer wall at dusk. His wide eyes could see more clearly. His eyes saw the first wall tumbled down. He saw the bodies and the blood spread all around. He saw the red claws and spades. He found his wife in front of the wall, still holding her spade. He found his daughter behind the wall, fallen where she had hid. His younger son lay further in, by the second wall spread upon the ground. His eldest son was torn apart by the second gate, knife undrawn. Others of the people lay among them, but Ammannunitup saw only his family. From the brick walls came the long-clawed men to challenge him, but when they recognized Ammannunitup, they told him about the battle. They grieved with him. They helped him gather up his wife and children, taking them to the fires. They swore to stand beside Ammannunitup when his family rose to the sun's domain. They swore to fight beside him when he went to fight the enemy. Ammannunitup found his peace. Ammannunitup reached the canopy. His hands were clean. His eyes were clear. His heart was empty. He climbed beneath the canopy, walking above the Magakansi village. He easily avoided the up-top men of the Magakansi, as easily as he had avoided the beasts of the sun's domain. He was a clever up-top man. Ammannunitup chose a spot above the heart of the Magakansi village. He chopped through the branches with his wife's spade. He cut through the vines with his son's knife. He went high above with his own net and filled it with the fluttering kennet birds. Then Ammannunitup threw off his woven hat and waved his bright knife to the sun. Soon enough a taskry came to investigate. It circled high to see what was flashing above the canopy. It dove to snatch up the kennet, or to snatch up its larger meal. The taskry landed. The half-cut branches could not hold the beast's weight. The weakened branches cracked. The taskry thrashed, trying to fly away. Ammannunitup struck it with his knife, tearing its leg. It snapped at him in pain. It lashed with its hooked claws. Ammannunitup made the taskry angry, to follow him down where he fled. Ammannunitup dove from the canopy. I actually want to apologize. I forgot to mention any sort of warning that there was blood and serious themes involved. I forgot to say that ahead of time, so I apologize if anybody was caught off guard or if that struck you in a soft place. But, again, it's a story about anger, revenge, but a different kind of anger. It's one of my favorites, and it's a really hard one to sell. Should I go on to next? We are at 8:30, so I've got plenty of time. What I have planned, so I've got a few more poems. There's song lyrics. I haven't got the music to them yet, so I'm sorry I won't sing them this time. Yes. Anger after death even. And the last thing, as time permits, I'll probably get into another chapter, like I did on my last live, of a book that I helped co-write with the creator called Guardian Fighters Era. It's a light novel. It's the manga style illustrations. So that was created by Darren Samsonith, written by he and I, and illustrated by Socrates Mota. So not trying to sell the book too much, but just saying I'm going to read from it if we have time tonight. And it is about anger. It's another chapter about fury and its results. Okay, let's get back into the swing of things. I'll actually go with a short one. This, by the way, some sneak previews coming up here of things that'll be on my TikTok. You heard We Might Replace You, or We Might Replace Them. That'll be on a TikTok video eventually. This one's called Sitters. You'll get it. There's an asterisk in there. It's going to be a TikTok video later. It's just short. If something's not your cup of tea, it doesn't need your spit, much less your bit of something else that also rhymes with spit. While you're allowed to not enjoy the things that you don't like, please skip the nasty comments on the things that others might. Yes, if you see specific flaws or harms a work's committing, then criticize those issues, sure, but make a clear distinction to tell what parts are really bad and which just aren't your preference. Here's a hint. Objective fact has more than just one reference. And if your goal is trying to bend more viewers to your view, guess what? More listeners likely will be thinking less of you. Again, more of me like talking to an audience that's not here. I always hope that people who need to hear these things will actually see these poems and videos. Thank you again. And let's keep rolling with that theme. All right. All these short, quick ones, little points. This one's less ranty. It's still got anger in there. It's still got a point, but I tried with this one to spell it out more long form. So this actually started, it was supposed to be one of the tarot poems, by the way. I was writing the poem for the World card, the last card in the major arcana, the World. And I've started and stopped 3 poems for that one. I finished one. It'll be on the TikTok eventually. But the unfinished ones, one went in the scrap heap. I have a whole folder, something like 20 plus poems that have not been finished and may never be finished. But some of them do turn into something else. So I've started finishing some in a different direction. So that's where this came from, bearing in mind. It's called Law of Nurture. You've heard of the law of nature? This is the law of nurture. Here we go. It's much easier being sensible when I'm not feeling miserable. And it's harder doing right when life goes wrong. I have noticed I'm more able when I'm feeling safe and stable, and when comfortable, my self-control is strong. Yes, I know it's no great shock that steering clear of moral faults is made more difficult when plagued by stress and torment. Though there's never good excuse to give indulgence to abuse, to ruin you, yourself, and others in your orbit. And I know there are diseases that can muscle past all eases and provoke misdeeds, no matter our good fortunes. I'm just trying to draw attention as to how we read intention and assign most misbehavior to poor morals. I've heard play the hand you're dealt, which may work when play goes well, but even master players struggle with bad draws. Much the same, a given villain might be better, fortune's willing, if their circumstance had given better odds. Yes, we've heard about the sainted, who could somehow stay untainted, though their holy lives were filled with hellish horror. But you'll notice they're uncommon. Most of us will end up somewhere in between the mostly good and mostly awful. If you understand my thesis, then the logic of it argues that a populace is kinder when content. So the more we ease our troubles, then the more we'll all be civil, less distracted by disruptions in our midst. Here's where sophic, cynic persons interrupt to raise objections, to remind us that the world is hard and spare. We're all born to need and want, not because of any fault, but because there's never goods enough to spare. They would argue that good manners aren't based on one's environs, and that virtue must come first, and then earn leisure. But to me, that's just excuses to deny some hoarded resource to the suffering based on personal displeasure. Yes, our actions come from choosing, but the data that we're using it to compute our course is based on our surroundings. So unless you would assert that good or evil comes from birth, then you have to see that morals need good grounding. Oh, unless you are the kind that thinks that suffering makes us wise, that we're somehow helped to shine by being tarnished. I don't know how I'll convince you if you can't see evidences that proving pain more often breaks than brings catharsis. We can dance around discussions, but all history holds the lesson that more progress has been made when needs are met. And while troubles make some clever, most are flattened by ill weather, and the crops do not grow right until storms end. We've already tried assuming there's inherent flaws in humans. That's a view that might be fueled by reinforcement. Why not try bestowing blessings to offset whatever's missing, and perhaps we'll see the brighter side of nature. What I love about a poem like that is it's long enough, obtuse enough. It requires actually reading or listening closely. So generally people who would just hear that viewpoint and go, liberal, or progressive, haven't listened through to the end. So I can get away with it. And the people who are nodding along going, he's got a good point. They're the ones that'll actually finish. I know that sounds so seriously elitist ivory tower bullcrap. But I've long since given myself permission to use the $1 million words, as they say. Okay. So one more before I get to the book chapter. It looks like we're perfect on time at about quarter till. So I'll go through this and then I'll have 15, 20, however long to read the book. Now, thank you again. You're my stick around viewer. I appreciate it. Is it 255 yellow? Thank you, especially. So I often write in unreliable narrator. That is, the person speaking is not me. It's not saying the things I believe. It's meant to build contrast. It's satire. And I sometimes have to say that ahead of time if people don't get it in the midst of things. But this one's called Both Sides. It's not me speaking. I'm parodying a particular viewpoint. If you might have seen some of my other videos where I'm pretending to be Satan, I'm not Satan. I don't endorse Satan. I'm not a Satanist. I don't even think Satan is a great character, honestly speaking, or believe that he exists. But makes a really great foil for certain poems and literature, a really good character to pull out of the stock bin. So I've written recently 6 of them I put together on a video on YouTube that are all spoken from Satan's perspective. Just comes up a lot. I blame C.S. Lewis, read at a young and formative age. So with that all in mind, all the disclaimers disclaimed, this one's called Both Sides. And this is the song I mentioned. I'm trying to find a tune for it, but I'll just read it in as melodic a way as I can. Oh, they're not the nicest people. They're lazy and they're mean. They don't have jobs, they're high on drugs, they don't keep very clean. They're ignorant, unstable, and the worst of all, they lie. Who is it that I'm talking about? I'm talking about both sides. Yeah, both sides are disgusting, and both sides are to blame. They say that they're the opposite, but really they're the same. Don't make me pick, they make me sick, down both sides of the line. The only man that I can stand is purely unaligned. Progressives or conservatives, pro-choicers or pro-life, Catholics and Protestants, cool mint or pumpkin spice, atheists, evangelists, Black Lives or KKK, they all think that they're different, but I think they're the same. Yeah, both sides are disgusting, and both sides are to blame. They say that they're the opposite, but really they're the same. They think they're right, they gripe and fight with no sense of restraint. If they had sense, they'd ride the fence, where decent people sit. They'll beat you up, they'll kick your dog, they'll sell you as a slave. Yeah, both sides want you mind-controlled, consumed by mindless rage. They're idiots, incompetents, who'd have us all in thrall through intricate conspiracies that I myself unraveled. Yeah, both sides are disgusting, and both sides are to blame. They say that they're the opposite, but really they're the same. Don't trust no lying partisan who claims to hold beliefs. It's all a troll to get control. The truth's in apathy. Yeah, both sides are disgusting, and both sides are to blame. They wear a different uniform, but play the same damn game. When you have seen the puppet strings, these conflicts look like jokes. By making fun of everyone, you prove you're truly woke. Nasty words. And again, I'm going to avoid naming names, but there are certain artists, creators, that take this attitude that if they just make fun of everyone, that they found the truth. Blech. I don't think she's on here, but my friend Lillian does an excellent job of explaining that point. That both sidesism is the surest way to make sure that you're wrong. All right. That's a lot of my attitude, a lot of my fury. Republican democracy. Yeah, no. I'm not saying that there's absolutely no point in that if you get into things like a two-party system, they often are the same beast with two faces. But the two parties aren't both sides. There are other sides that don't get to play in the game. So, it depends on how you mean it too. I see I've got a video comment. I'll come back to that later. Awesome. All right, so I see a few more people coming in. Red Wolf, hello, hello. Coming in toward the end of things, but I do have a bit more content to come. So what I'm doing is reading a bit from a book, and it's backward, of course, on my camera, but it's called Guardian Fighters Era. It's one that I helped to co-write with the creator, the originator of the idea. It's a graphic novel, it's a light novel. There are a lot of illustrations, but not quite that many. And here, I can show you one. The beginning of the chapter. That is the art of Socrates Mota. Yeah. Shows a man crashing to the ground. Thank you. See, thanks from Red Wolf Locuson. Oh, I haven't even gotten to my Loki poems. You'd think I'm doing anger and heat right now. I ought to throw in something for Loki. Really should. Okay. Now that I've said it, it's in my mind. Now that you're here, it's in my mind. Before I do the book chapter, let's see if I can find it real fast. If the Trickster... Oh, the name of the novel again. It is Guardian Fighters Era. Actually, there's a subtitle too, excuse me. The New Disciples. Because that's the series, Guardian Fighters Era. But it's the first one that's out right now. The New Disciples is book 1. The New Disciples arrive. I apologize for the pause. I don't mean to tease. But I'm doing anger, I'm doing heat, I'm doing fire. I need to bring Loki into this. I've said his name 3 times. Is it like Beetlejuice? I really ought to find torches. I wish I had that available. It's one I've actually given as an offering in the past. I never put on TikTok. Oh, I could find his Ode to Tyr. That was one of my OM poems. Ah! Okay, that's the first one that came to hand. I'm going to find little torches and do that for a future live. Because it was about the Charlottesville riots. Loki's commentary on, oh, you think these are my people? These firebrands, these hellraisers? Hell no. Okay. So, we're doing fire. So this is a Tale of Tyr, Loki's Ode to Tyr in his own way. Stiff staff, sharp shaft, Pater's pointed pole, massive mast, Tiwa's task, hunting honors halls. Rigid rod, gleaming god, standing straight and sore. I mean, sure. Upright, bond right, laring lupine's lure. Beast bound, dragged down, trick betraying trust. Fist fed, ripped red, spearman short and stumped. Turn tail, wolf's wail, warrior's withdrawn vow. Duty done, twisted tongue, one hand wanker wielder now. I'm actually sad that was the first one I found. I like some of the others better. But hail. And to Odin. If I drink to one. All right. I'm already in Huck. I do a monthly write to Hermes, and sometimes I do those on live. So I've got one trickster already. Well, let's put it this way. I spent a month writing one poem per month to Hermes as offerings, as a big sacrifice offering. When I got done with that month, I started getting shopped around. There's a less nice term for it, but being offered as for services for other beings. So I've ended up writing a lot of poems for other beings and deities, including one for Priapus, including one for Medusa. So there are quite a few for Loki if I wanted to make a night of that. But the next one on the list is Hecate. She's got the next ticket on the window. Need more deities or more poems for deities? I'll pause. If you can clarify that, Yellow. I've got one series I'm actually going to put together into a YouTube video later all by itself. Okay, I won't explain this too long. More poems. I really would like to get the book chapter tonight, so I'm going to start on that next, but afterward I'll look up one or two more pieces. How's that? What was I going to say? The lesser known or the characters from mythology that don't get to speak as often. So I put one on TikTok before for Pandora. I've also got pieces for Cassandra, who is the woman cursed to always foretell the future and tell the truth but never be believed. Medusa, Icarus. I really like that one for Icarus, but again, I haven't put it on a TikTok video yet. I think. I'll have to look at that, but I don't think I have. But, you know, these characters that tend to be treated as the villains or the fools of their stories. I probably should do Arachne at some point. Maybe even Narcissus. That's going to be a hard one, but yeah, I like those kind of characters, and I like giving them their voice. Okay, the short version of the long explanation I was going to say, if you're familiar with the works of Gregory Maguire, he's a writer, did Wicked, is his most famous work, but also a number of books written from a different character's perspective. So there's one that's a woman who moves into a house haunted by the ghost of Ebenezer Scrooge. She gets his take on the story. Things like that. So I love that kind of writing where you let a character that doesn't usually get a voice, whether they're the antagonist or an NPC, so to speak, a bit character, talk and tell the story from their perspective. They might be wrong. They might be lying, or they might be sympathetic. Hell, they might be the hero the way they tell it. Okay. So going back to the book chapter, since I did want to fit that in tonight. This is chapter 1 of the book. Not the first chapter, because there is a prelude that sets the world up that gives you an idea of what's going on. So just to put this in context of what you would have read before, this is a fantasy world. We refer to it as a martial arts fantasy. In this setting, there's been a enormous apocalyptic war, more so than usually when we use that term. Literally, the world rearranged itself. Landforms were shifted, continents moved around, populations rearranged. In the midst of this chaos, there were great wars, and finally a world council, organized to stop the fighting, and they instituted a champion system that battles between nations would have to be resolved by fights between their strongest warriors, their champions. And in this setting, there's a bit of magic. So what a champion is a little different than now. a champion should be able to fight on their own. They're strong enough to fight 1,000 people by themselves. No ordinary arms or armor could harm them. So it only makes sense that they fight out these battles and resolve the fate of nations. So with that as background, hopefully this will jump in and make more sense. When the battered body of their guardian crashed into the center of Talish's main marketplace one fine morning, few citizens witnessed it personally. Most residents of the area had already retreated into their homes. They might not have known what exactly was happening, but the alarms and crashes coming from the Guardian's golden palace had suggested some trouble. Guardian Skabil seemed to be the target of the said trouble. He looked half dead, in fact. When the brave souls who remained in the market emerged to look, they were shocked to see their guardian sprawled in the dust. His tall, athletic frame wasn't quite so imposing when flat on the ground. His dark skin was blooming with even darker bruises. His black hair was scattered and dirty, full of grit. He was not wearing his typical finery, but only a pair of torn pale silk pants, as if he had been roused roughly from his bed. Who could have battered the mightiest fighter in all of Salem Dalam? Was another guardian present, without warning, without challenge? The explanation followed shortly, in the form of a slight, uniformed woman leaping into the cleared square. She followed a similar arc to Skabil's flight, but landed neatly and under her own control. If not for that singular feat, she would have been underestimated on sight. She was a foot shorter than the mighty guardian and much lighter. Her light hair was cropped short, and her features were so plain as to be almost forgettable. Her strange clothing would attract attention, though, an archaic uniform of impossibly fine white fabric, with a shirt squarely cut at the shoulders and pants smoothly fit at the hips, studded with silver badges and topped with a felted flat cap. A short cape wrapped around her shoulders, fluttering in the dusty breeze. To those who recognized it, the uniform explained much. The World Council. Only the counselors dared to wear military clothing, the remnants of an old world's power and authority. When the woman finally spoke, she revealed more. Socrates' drawing of the woman in question. Skabil, guardian of Salem Dalam, I, Fultora, formally challenge you to a public match, to the death, in consequence of your repeated violations of council law. By my authority as head of the World Council, you must accept this challenge. Stand and fight, or run, again, and die. The few bystanders backed further away, yet remained within range of sight. Their guesses about what constituted a safe distance were aided by the belated arrival of 3 more uniformed figures, who formed a perimeter around the 2 combatants. Their warders stood like ancient statues, a bald bronzed god, a black-skinned athlete with improbable pale red curls, and a tall, pale silver-blonde nobleman. Their pristine white uniforms matched their leaders, but without the same accents of cap and cape. The 3 did no more than stand and watch, but their presence added weight to Fultora's words. A public fight had a limited radius. The combatants were not supposed to pass beyond 100 meters of their starting point. Any of their attacks, even blasts of projected key, should not extend much farther, yet accidents could happen, and a bystander caught in the wake of a lawfully declared fight had only themselves to blame for their injury. Damage to shops, carts, and other property could occur, but were supposed to be minimal. Similarly, the responsible fighter was supposed to pay the costs of breakage. But who was going to sue a guardian or a high counselor for damages? Or considering the usual outcome of a death match, would they sue the estate of the loser? Despite the risks, the people of Tylush were not about to miss this fight. They watched out of perverse fascination, curious to see how the match would unfold. Could their guardian actually defeat the head counselor? It seemed unlikely, considering he had been defeated just recently by the guardian Dennis of Zymetria. Then again, Dennis was a grandmaster and the 3rd greatest guardian in the world. The head counselor herself was only a master rank, like Skabil, and she was no longer participating in ranked combat. Perhaps her skills had declined after years of government. The bystanders also wanted to hear why this fight was happening. What had the mighty Skabil done to earn the council's wrath, much less that of the head counselor and her personal attention? There had been rumors of his misbehavior, but few believed that any guardian, much less the guardian of their nation, would do such awful things. Still, if Fultora was acting with council authority, and not on her own, she must have proof. There's another picture of her standing over the challenged. Guardian Skabil was not easily beaten, not by another guardian nor by a counselor. He stretched and lifted himself from the ground, taking time to recover. The bruises on his skin began to shrink, healing rapidly as he circulated his ki. He stood, shaky but proud, and faced Fultora. He shouted back, "Violations! I have broken no law. You abuse your authority, Fultora. This match is only an excuse to silence a critic, someone who sees you for the tyrant that you are." Fultora, standing back only a dozen meters, scoffed loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "Ha! Do not pretend to innocence. If you are not guilty, why hide in your palace when I arrived? Why didn't you answer me when I called for your presence? You hid behind walls and guards and servants, as if those would stop me. You refused to answer my challenge privately. I was forced to drag you out here, bring you into the public square and try you before the people of your capital, to kill you publicly." Her words struck hard, and the accused guardian flinched. He struggled again to protest. "I resisted because you have no authority to challenge me. I have committed no crime. Your charges are false." Fultora stretched, her hands held to her side, fingers splaying and clenching. "Oh, I've heard the witnesses. Even your own people do not believe you, though your ruler does fear to remove you from power. The citizens know you're evil. You have abused your position as guardian for far, far too long. You exploited your disciples and their families. You accepted money to choose certain disciples above others. You instructed your disciples to lose at tournament challenges in order to win money by betting against them." The head counselor scowled as she pointed at Skabil. "You demanded intimate favors from disciples and their families. You even allowed disciples to die during your training so that you could replace them and reap new profit from new students. You terrorized the citizens you were supposed to serve, stealing from them and even injuring them without compensation." "Lies! All lies!" screamed Skabil. His eyes darted about the street as if searching for his betrayers among his populace. "The grudges of failed students. They accuse me in order to benefit themselves. Extortion, blackmail. Counselor Fultora, do not be misled." "Silence!" shouted Fultora in return. "You have been given ample patience and mercy. These accusations are not the first, nor the second, nor the third case against you. You have been accused and warned before." Here is Skabil rising and responding to these accusations and preparing to fight. Fultora is continuing. "We have waited years for you to heed the orders of the council and repair your behavior. And once again we hear of your misdeeds. There is no more mercy left, Skabil. The council is behind me on this. Finally. You are not fit to be guardian, but you will not step down. There remains only one remedy." As Fultora concluded her speech, her hands began to shimmer and glow. The light was dim and the effect subtle, and many in the crowd missed it. But Skabil, close by and knowledgeable of the powers of ki, saw the energy and knew its meaning. He straightened fully then, regaining what pride he could manage. His skin, nearly clear of its bruises by that point, darkened once more, but more evenly. It dulled to the color of raw iron, reddish black. His eyes gleamed with the same power that illumined Fultora's hands. He raised his fist, taking a fighting stance. "If you are determined to be unjust, then I must accept your challenge," he spat with fatal bravado. "I may die, but the world will see that I fought well and made the head counselor suffer for her follies." Fultora lazily assumed her own stance, feet arched, knees bent, hands raised and tapered into points. Fight, then. Your words are worthless. At that insult, Skabil leapt, lashing out with his leading hand while pulling back his other fist for a powerful blow, ready to smash through and crush her after he had torn aside her defenses. Instead, Voltura slipped away, escaping the Guardian's opening swipe. He still attempted his follow-up, but the attack met empty air. The onlookers gasped, surprised not only that their Guardian was missing so badly, but that the counselor had needed to move so little to avoid him. She was not only swift, her defense was controlled to the minimum motion required to stay out of his range. The two fighters ended their movements nearly side by side. When Voltura countered his attack, ordinary eyes could hardly see her limbs moving. Her pointed hands lashed out like striking serpents, once each, stabbing at the elbow and shoulder of Skabil's outstretched arm. Though his punches were neither slow nor clumsy, Voltura treated his retracting arm like a stationary target, tapping it with selective precision. Skabil tumbled backward, his limb hanging weakly for a moment. We've got a multiple panel sequence, a montage. Her slipping aside and poking him again and again. Skabil struggled to lift his arm back into position, the muscles responding more sluggishly. He looked confused. How had this small woman not only struck hard enough to hurt him through his potent defenses, but also surgically enough to disable his strength? The head counselor did not give him time to consider his position. She slid forward through the dust, her feet drawing arcs as she advanced. When Skabil tried to raise his hands in defense, she struck aside his forearms, opening up his guard. She closed further, striking repeatedly, stabbing him in the neck, chest, and good arm. He lifted a knee and attempted a clearing kick, but that leg too was smashed aside and further weakened. Skabil swiped with clawed fingers, his palms shimmering with destructive force. Voltura again evaded his desperate flurry and punished him in return, ducking under one long swing and coming back up with a pointed toe close to his throat. For several more seconds, the pair exchanged attacks. For each key art the Guardian revealed: scorching hand, blinding flash, illusion kick. The counselor had an answer, making him pay for each mistake. The dark armor protecting Skabil's flesh proved insufficient to spare him pain and weakness, and in time, even that defense faded as his energy was spent. At the end of their last exchange, Skabil went down on one knee, his arm dangling pathetically. He was shaking, his eyes dimming as his ki plummeted. He was struggling to rebuild his armor and heal his disabled limbs. Voltura stood over him, neither breathing heavily nor showing any sign of excitement. The Guardian managed to raise his face and one hand, calling out, "Stop, please! I admit my crimes. I ask the mercy of the council. I surrender. Just please don't kill me." Voltura laughed, but it was bitter, without any real humor. "If it were only a matter of your prior crimes, you might find my mercy. But you continue to violate the code, and even after the council had corrected you. You defied our lawful orders. You tried to hide from justice, to hide from me. I have no confidence you will not sin again, even if you are retired as Guardian. No, Skabil, I have no mercy left." She said nothing more, but spoke instead with her hands. One sharp edge flashed downward, knocking aside Skabil's upraised palm, audibly cracking the bones of his hand and wrist. His hand had barely fallen before Voltura's second strike plunged down. The edge of her hand shone briefly with power, pure white and intense. Its movement was otherwise invisible due to its speed, but the afterimage of that light showed its path, just above Skabil's shoulders, cleanly across his neck. The Guardian's head flew free, separated by the slicing blow and launched by its force. The head spiraled upward and flew through the air, landing and rolling across the floor of the dusty marketplace. It came to rest against a stack of wooden crates. Voltura stepped neatly backward to avoid the spatter of blood spraying from the man's severed neck. After a long moment, Skabil's body fell forward into the street. The counselor spared no further attention to the head, its former body, or the gathered citizens of Tylish. She said nothing more. She did not need to. Her message had been delivered. Her guards said nothing either. The paler man spared a glance at the separated head, but quickly returned to attention, heeding his superior's gesture to depart. Chatter among the gathered citizens immediately began to analyze the event and its importance. The news would spread. The head counselor was still certainly a powerful fighter, perhaps even more than before she had joined the council. Scabell had been tried, found guilty, and executed, but all according to the code. Most important, Salam Dalam needed a new guardian. Perhaps one among Scabell's remaining disciples might be qualified to represent the kingdom now? Perhaps a new fighter would rise to the challenge and gain the Shah's blessing. Until then, Salam Dalam would fall in the world's fortunes, no longer able to defend itself. Scabell had been a flawed man, but he was at least a competent fighter. His ability had ensured that Salam Dalam held on to its resources and prosperity, and without him, that nation would suffer. Even so, no one would be complaining to the council about Scabell's death, not even their Shah. His nation's loss was Scabell's fault, for violating the council's laws, the world's laws. The Guardian Code had ensured peace and prosperity for all. Defying that system, or the council that enforced it, meant going back to the strife and suffering of the past, and no one wanted that. Guardians who defied the council were intolerable. They were betraying their own people as much as breaking the council's laws. Oh, I skipped this because I didn't want to spoil the end of Scabell. There's blood described in the text, but we kept it light in the illustrations. And in the next picture, at the end of the chapter, the head counselor and her associates. When the head counselor walked away, few faulted her actions, and no one spoke against her, even after her honor guard had followed her out of the market square. Most of the residents were simply grateful the conflict had caused no further damage. Their main concerns were the cleanup of some blood, a head, and a corpse. When Fultora returned to the train station to depart Telush, she received only quiet respect. She left Salam Dalam to consider her lesson. Like I say, another story about anger and its results. And that chapter, as you might guess, was intended to further introduce the world after the prologue and to give you an idea of some characters. And it's meant to leave you with a question. Was Fultora, you're welcome, appreciate the thanks, raises the question, was Fultora justified? Does the worst sanction need to be levied against someone who's threatening the quote-unquote stability of the whole world? Or is she a tyrant making use of her power to strike down anyone who dares question it? That's a question to be explored throughout this book and the subsequent sequels. We're in the process of editing and starting the illustrations for book 2. So this one I'll have out at cons, and it's available for sale now. The next one probably not until the middle of next year, maybe before next year's Comic-Con around here in Erie. So again, not trying to sell too much, but explaining why I wanted to throw that in there. It's writing that I'm proud of. We finally got it in print just a couple months ago. Okay, I promised a couple more poems. I'm wondering if I can keep them in theme. Let me look real quick. I've got a stack here of recent things that have either been recorded for TikTok or YouTube or have been sent off for possible publication. Okay, these are all the ones from the last live, so I'll skip past those. That's the one I just posted, Orcos, about the God of Oaths, but not really. Ooh. If anyone here wasn't at my... Oh, you did? Thank you! That's better than, honestly, any gift, because not only do I get a little bit of a bump, more of the proceeds go to Darren, again, who's the creator of the book series. All the ideas that went into it were his. So I really want to popularize and spread it for him, for giving me a great job like that. Well, okay. Here's a possibility. I did read it at my last Hermes rite, so depending on if people were there, it's called "Be Gay and Do Crime, Worship Hermes." Might fit for Pride Month. I'll hold on to that. Oh, ooh. Do I have the Wraths of Hermes? That would be perfect. It's not on this stack, but I think I got to look for that one. Again, I mentioned before, I do a lot of work with Hermes. He's my primary patron and promoter. Do. If I find one of the other Loki ones, I'll read that too. Okay, that's for the Elder Futhark runes. Huh. That's from long ago. Kindle for the rune Kenaz, meaning torch or fire. That might be appropriate. It's about 9:15, so one or two more, I think. Be gay and do crime. Well, okay. It's an older slogan or saying, a meme before the internet. Be gay, do crime. Taken as different ways and different meanings, but often in the past, just being gay or being queer in any way was a crime. So there's a friend of mine, Lillian, who expanded that to be gay, do crime, worship Hermes. The poem explains that. So maybe I should read that one. I want to see if I can find one of the other Loki poems. I may not have printed them all out. These are mostly the runes. Hey. I don't think we want to read the Norse epic poem. It's long. And it's not on theme. Doesn't exactly stop me, but I like trying to stick things together. Inspiration. These are all inspiration poems. I won't take too much longer. If I don't find another, I'll just go with the ones that I found. Yay! I found one for Loki. Those are good. Okay. So the other one for Loki, the one that I was really looking for as my favorite, I've done on a TikTok video before since it's relatively short, but we're talking fire and we're talking anger. And Loki's a great one for putting anger into action and doing stuff with it. Yes, okay, doing shit with it. It's a fine Germanic origin word. I might as well use it when I'm talking about one from that tradition. Sharp-tongued. A strifing tongue's no gift, a useful tool at best, self-destructive at worst, a threat to the world, a burden to bear. To wield a tongue so sharp as to cut bonds between hearts, carving away restraint, skewering pride, and bleeding resolve. A tongue that sharp's a blade, its wielder responsible. All that you cut down comes due, judged in the balance, oft unfairly. Would you swing swords for fun, laughing if you cut your friends or if you slaughtered neighbors? No more wave tongues for joy or spite. Each cut calculated, though wanton cruel it seems, blood and wails with each word. That pain is a cure, I assure you. A scalpel, not a sex. Cut fine and fast and fly, go before the blood flows, else they'll cry foul and bind you down. Would you wield this weapon? Blamed for all you destroy, though you cure more than curse, striking bright sparks across scarred lips. A strifing tongue's no gift. Its grant might be a curse. If trusted with this tool, would you aid love or inspire hate? That was the first one Loki gave to me. And I don't always say that I'm actually speaking in the deity's voice. I'm trying to bring it through as best I can, but it's still an offering in his honor. That's another reason that I chose the Bardic Punk moniker. I often will wear a button that says, comfort the afflicted, afflict the comfortable. That is a good summary of my ethos. Annoy those that have power, help those that don't. Okay, on that note, let's cause more trouble. Be gay and do crime. Worship Hermes. I encountered the phrase in a forum one day. Be gay and do crimes. Worship Hermes. It spoke to me, though I was not certain why. Be gay and do crimes. Worship Hermes. While Hermes has certainly earned my respect, most people regard me as straight in matters that cause my own herm to erect and in legal affairs to the state. But Hermes himself would be first to point out that nothing in nature is plain. We're all on the scale if we know it or not. Each creature must harbor some gay. And crime is defined not by absolute right, but by who makes the laws at the time. If the rules aren't right, by not falling in line, you're already doing a crime. And when being gay or any but straight is disallowed under the law, then by doing the first part, you're doing the second, and maybe the third will just follow. So why not be gay, just as much as you may, and annoy those who should be annoyed? Why not do the crimes that don't hurt anyone, feed the homeless, trespass, and complain? If you don't step down on the ones who have less by depriving their strength or their pride, then Hermes will bless all that trouble and mess, and when it counts, stand on your side. Now, if there's a deity you'd rather endorse, then don't let me push mine on you. That seems much more fair. Do you see how that works? One might call it an enlightened view. So, Hermetic worship is optional then, though you might just accidentally find that without intent you've given to him just by being gay and doing crimes. So now when I see it, I fully endorse. Be gay and do crimes, worship Hermes. When you know what it means, it's a matter of course. Be gay and do crimes, worship Hermes. Let me say it again with a little more force. Be gay and do crimes, worship Hermes. And for magical reasons, I'll throw in a fourth. Be gay and do crimes, worship Hermes. You can tell the ones I love because they're much more fluent. I've done them over and over and over. One of these days I'm going to get that fully in memory too. But yeah, that's the fault and the credit of my dear friend, sister, Lillian, who tacked on the Worship Hermes part officially. I always give her credit. Okay. I think this is going to be the last one for tonight because we're coming up on 9:30. You want that in print? Where do I have it? Oh, it's on my YouTube channel. So if you go through my link tree in the profile, you can find that. Again, you're welcome to copy it down. I don't mind people spreading my work as long as they give attribution, either under my actual name, Nathan Large, or Bardic Punk, my TikTok handle. But yeah, that's all I've got right now. However, private message me. That's one I don't mind disseminating. Most of my Hermes works, I do a lot publicly, and I'm not trying hard to publish privately or get paid for because they're offerings for him. And part of the offering is sharing. It's why I do these lives, not just for my poetry, but also for my devotional rites, is to put it out in the world. Wisdom's a waste if it's kept to yourself. Knowledge is wasted. I won't credit myself in saying these poems are necessarily wisdom or knowledge, but I do them on purpose. I think there's some value in them. So yes, those, particularly the ones that are deity offerings, I will send them over to you. Just give me a message where to send it to. Like I say, either here or on my YouTube, there should be a link that can get a message to me. Okay, last one for the night. We're doing fire. We're doing heat. This again has been on TikTok, but it fits the evening, and I'll close it off here. It's called Kindle. It's in honor of the rune Kenaz, which is the one that goes like. Oh, of course. Let me draw it. Oh, I know. Hey, if I flip it over, there. So it'll show on the camera the right way around. So it looks like the Pac-Man mouth. But it stands for the sound K and means something like torch, fire, although some of the other discussions have it meaning things like fever, decay. It can be a good cleansing fire. It can be a forge fire. It can be a fire of rot and fermentation. All these things joined together in this particular symbol. Knowledge, yes. Illumination, learning, study, the work that produces new knowledge. All those are in that box. That's one of the reasons why I like playing with symbol sets so much, beyond having dreams of studying symbology or semiotics as a kid and finding out that doesn't pay any money, but also then as a pagan getting into questions of divination, of spiritual meaning, being fascinated by how all these things have combined over their age. There's different poets, there's different rune poems, there's different descriptions, and all of them get squeezed together in that little nugget of meaning and then come out again when you query them, when you intone them, when you use them in your work. Okay. Kindle. Wow, this is appropriate considering I started with converting fury. It's a similar point. Fire in the head is a hungering thing. It takes all that its maker will give. Beware, or you'll feed it the whole of your being, yet starve it, and neither will live. Give your fire steel, and it softens and flows. Give it ore, silver, or gold. Give it a roast or a golden brown loaf. The fuel it wants most is your soul. Stack up idea twigs and kindle with thought, then stoke with a forged tinder's will. Next pile up logs with the labors of hand. Pour love till the flames drink their fill. Then lean in enough to be warmed and inspired, but mind how the flames kiss and charm. They'll happily claim a stray hand, heart, or name, and replace it with something transformed. I've burned up my flesh on the pyre of my mind. Both were consumed in their mutual fire. I choose to give life and illumine the night, than to leave brilliance cold and my body entire. When this was written, I weighed maybe 135 pounds, so it was particularly salient. I'm well above that now. I've cut out some of the habits and got good medication that's got me out from being underweight, but that idea of burning yourself up for knowledge, for productivity, was very much in my mind. And that's what fire is. It converts things, moves energy from one form to another. Don't let it fool you that it doesn't have a cost, that energy is coming from nowhere. Same goes for fire in the head, or it's another term for bardic inspiration, as much as for fires of other kinds. The fire of revolution, it burns bodies. The fire of inspiration takes your time and your energy, and actual physical fires. They have to be fed. All right, it is 9:30. Much love and thanks to those who stuck around. I saw a couple names over and over. Thank you so much. I hope you will get in contact, especially if you'd like one of those poems in print. I've done reformatted versions also for one or two friends that asked for them, past poems. So again, happy to do it. All right, I'll drag on forever. Otherwise, have a good night. Stay cool if it's hot in your area, or stay warm if you still need the heat. And stay angry. Not in a way that hurts you, but in a way that burns what needs to be burned away and lights what needs to be illuminated. Good night.